The morning of October 27th was unusually clear for Guadalajara. I woke up at 7:30, even though my alarm clock had been set for 8. On the eve of my eldest daughter's wedding, I couldn't sleep for some reason. I got up, brewed some coffee, and went out onto the terrace of the mansion that my late husband Rafael had built 12 years ago. The house cost us then $400,000, and now it was estimated at $800,000. The half-hectare property was surrounded by a high wall, behind which grew old oaks and a few agaves. From here, from the second-floor terrace, there was a view of the whole site and part of the city in the distance. Workers were already busy in the yard. The florists from Azalea Salon were hanging garlands of white roses and lilies along the main walkway that led from the gate to the main entrance. I didn't buy this house for show. I just wanted the girls to have a place to have parties. Since Raphael's death 3 years ago, I had often thought about selling, but Amelia had strongly objected. "Mom, this house is our family history," she said. "This is where your grandchildren should grow up." Now Amelia was getting married, and I was ready to give her the celebration she had dreamed of since childhood. The wedding was set for 11 in the morning at St. Francis Church, followed by a banquet at Casa Real for 80 guests. Around 9, a crew from the catering company arrived. They were to set up a pre-wedding dinner for the nearest and dearest for 15 people. I went downstairs to supervise the process. The chefs were already setting out trays of appetizers in the kitchen, and the waiters were wiping glasses. "Señora Valenzuela," the manager, an older man with a neat mustache, said to me, "we have everything ready for you at 7 tonight, as you requested." I nodded and walked into the living room, where the florists were finishing the arrangement of white orchids on the fireplace mantel. The house looked festive, but not gaudy. I'd always preferred understated elegance. At 10 in the morning, Amelia showed up. She flew into the house like a hurricane in a tracksuit, her hair wet from the shower. "Mom, I'm having a panic attack," she announced, throwing her bag on the couch. "The manicurist is half an hour late, and the photographer has sent a message saying he can't arrive before 11:30. Amelia had always been prone to dramatization. As a child, every little thing had turned into a catastrophe of universal proportions. Now at 28, she was little changed in that respect. "Amelia, it's 9 hours until tonight," I said calmly. "You have plenty of time for all the procedures." "You don't understand." She started pacing nervously around the living room, almost hitting the composition. "Tomorrow has to be perfect. Absolutely perfect." I understood her excitement, but the constant fussing was getting tiresome. In the last 2 months of wedding preparations, Amelia had called me 3 times a day with questions about the decor, the menu, the music. We changed the restaurant twice, the floral arrangements 3 times, and the wedding dress 4 times. At 11:30, Cecilia arrived. The youngest daughter appeared at the door quietly, as always. Unlike her sister, she never made unnecessary noise. Cecilia worked as an elementary school teacher, lived in a small apartment in the center of town, and made a modest salary. I often offered to help her, but she always refused. "Hi, Mom." Cecilia kissed me on the cheek. "How are the preparations going?" "Amelia's in a panic. The florists are working, the chefs are cooking," I replied. "The usual pre-wedding frenzy." Cecilia smiled, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She had seemed anxious for the last few weeks, though she tried not to show it. When I asked what was wrong, she said she was just tired at work. "Where's my maid of honor?" Amelia appeared on the stairs in a robe with a towel on her head. "Cecilia, I need your help with the jewelry." Cecilia obediently went upstairs. I stayed downstairs to watch the florists at work. One of them, a young guy with a tattoo on his forearm, couldn't get the garland over the front door. "Maybe we should move it a little to the left," I suggested. "Señora, we're doing it as in the sketch," he replied, not very politely. I didn't argue. After all, Amelia had chosen these florists herself and insisted on every detail of the design. Around noon, Leonardo and his parents arrived. I watched from the window as they got out of an older sedan. Leonardo was a tall, thin guy in his 30s who worked for an insurance company. He and Amelia had met at the bank where she was a customer service manager. They'd been dating for 2 years, and I'd gotten used to him. He seemed calm and reliable, though not particularly ambitious. His parents, Don Manuel and Dona Carmen, looked confused. They lived in a small house in a working-class neighborhood. Don Manuel worked as a mechanic, and Doña Carmen worked as a janitor in an office building. Simple, honest people who clearly felt out of place in my mansion. "Welcome," I greeted them at the entrance. "Come in, please." "Thank you, Señora Valenzuela." Dona Carmen nervously adjusted her modest dress. "You have a very beautiful home." "Thank you. Coffee, tea?" We went into the living room. Leonardo's parents sat on the edge of the sofa as if afraid to dirty it. Don Manuel was twirling his cap in his hands, and Dona Carmen was staring at the orchids on the mantel. "How beautiful," she whispered. "It must be very expensive." Leonardo seemed calmer than my parents, but I could sense that he was a little tense too. He wore a simple shirt and pants, neatly ironed, but clearly not expensive. At that moment, Amelia came down the stairs. She had changed into an elegant dress and had her hair done. She looked flawless, as she always did when she wanted to impress. "Leonardo!" She walked up to the groom and kissed him on the lips. "Don Manuel, Dona Carmen, how are you?" "Good, good," Don Manuel muttered. "How are the wedding preparations?" Leonardo asked. "Everything is under control," Amelia replied in a tone I didn't like. There was a touch of patronizing in it. Mom tried to organize everything at the highest level. Doña Carmen blushed. "We are very grateful, Señora Valenzuela," she said. "I don't know what to say. Such expenses." "It's nothing," Amelia waved her hand. "A wedding comes once in a lifetime." I was embarrassed by my daughter's tone. Leonardo's parents were already uncomfortable, and she emphasized the difference in our abilities even more. "Doña Carmen, you worry in vain," I said softly. "It gives me great joy to see Amelia happy." The conversation was not going well. Amelia glanced at her watch. Leonardo tried to keep up a conversation about the weather, and his parents were silent, nodding occasionally. I served coffee and the homemade cookies I made this morning. "What delicious cookies!" Dona Carmen was pleased. "Can I have the recipe?" "Of course," I smiled. "It's my grandmother's recipe." "Carmen is a great baker at home, too," Don Manuel said, revitalized for the first time. "Her empanadas are especially good." "Papa," Amelia grumbled. "Don't." "Why not?" I interrupted. "I'd love to try Dona Carmen's empanadas." Leonardo looked at me gratefully. His parents relaxed a bit, and the conversation became more natural. We talked for about an hour, then the guests left to prepare for the evening dinner. After they left, Amelia rolled her eyes. "Mom, why are you encouraging this talk of empanadas? There will be decent people at the wedding tomorrow." "Decent people? I don't get it. Are your husband's parents not decent?" "You know what I mean," she dismissed me. "They are simple laborers. I respect them, of course, but you shouldn't emphasize the difference." It seemed to me that it was you who was emphasizing the difference. Amelia shrugged and went to her room. I stayed in the living room pondering her words. My eldest daughter was always striving for the best, and I understood that. But sometimes her ambition took a not-so-pleasant form. In the evening, as the guests gathered for dinner, the atmosphere became more relaxed. Leonardo's parents, a few glasses of wine, relaxed and began to tell funny stories from their son's childhood. Cecilia helped me with serving the food, and Amelia played the role of a cordial hostess. At 9 o'clock in the evening, the guests departed. I was putting away the dishes when the phone rang. It was Paloma, my best friend of 25 years. "Well, are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked. "I think I have everything under control," I answered, sitting down in my chair. "Amelia is nervous, but that's normal." "And Leonardo? Is he holding up well?" "Yeah, he's calm. His parents are nice people, but they're a little shy." "I see. How are you feeling?" I wondered. How did I feel? Tired, I guess. The last 2 months had been spent organizing the wedding, and I'd worked my ass off. A little tired, I admitted. But the important thing was that Amelia was happy. "Estrella," Paloma's voice became serious. "Don't forget about yourself. Amelia is a grown woman. She must learn to solve her problems." "What are you talking about?" "Oh, just a reminder. Sometimes kids get used to their parents always coming to their rescue." We talked for a few more minutes. Then we said goodbye. I went up to my bedroom, but I couldn't sleep. There was quiet music playing outside the wall, in Amelia's room. She was getting ready for tomorrow, the most important day of her life. I stood at the window and looked out at the city at night. Outside the window were the twinkling lights of Guadalajara, the city that had become my home 30 years ago, when I had come here from a small town in Michoacán. At that time, I had nothing but a pharmacy degree and a desire to succeed. Rafael helped me open my first pharmacy, then a second, then a third. By the time he died, we had a small chain of 5 pharmacies in different parts of the city. Tomorrow, my eldest daughter will be a married woman. I raised her, gave her an education, supported her in all her endeavors. Amelia graduated from university, got a good job in a bank, met a decent guy. Everything was going according to the plan that Rafael and I had built for our girls. But for some reason, I felt uneasy. Maybe it was the way Amelia behaved with Leonardo's parents, or maybe it was the fact that she started talking more and more about money, about status, about deserving the best. When she was young, she had dreamed of becoming a veterinarian to treat sick animals. Now, all she was interested in was her career and material possessions. I stepped away from the window and lay in bed. The sheets smelled of lavender. I always added a few drops of essential oil when I did laundry. It was a habit I'd picked up from my grandmother. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but my thoughts kept me awake. She remembered burying Rafael 3 years ago. The heart attack had happened suddenly, and the doctors couldn't do anything. Amelia had been there for me, supporting me, helping me with the funeral arrangements. And then she began to talk more and more often about how I was uncomfortable alone in such a big house, that I should think about moving to a smaller apartment. "Mom, why do you need so many rooms?" she said. "You spend all your time in pharmacies, and this house needs constant upkeep." I didn't pay much attention to what she said at the time. I thought my daughter was looking out for my comfort. But now, lying in the dark bedroom, I suddenly realized that the talk of moving had started right after my father's death. Coincidence? Behind the wall, the music faded. Amelia had finally gone to bed. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning, she would become Leonardo Hernandez's wife. And I'll be a mother-in-law, a new role that takes some getting used to. The clock on the nightstand read 12:30. I closed my eyes and tried not to think about anything but tomorrow's party. Everything would be fine. Amelia would be happy, Leonardo would love her, the guests would enjoy the festivities, and I will be proud of my beautiful daughter in a white dress. But the dream never came. In my head I could hear scraps of conversations, looks, intonations. Something was wrong, but I could not understand what it was. My motherly heart felt an uneasiness that my mind could not yet explain. The morning of October 28th began when I was awakened by a knock on my bedroom door. It was 7:30, and I had not yet recovered from a restless night. "Mom, can I come in?" Amelia's voice came through the door. "Of course, come in," I replied, pulling on my robe. Amelia came in carrying a tray with 2 cups of coffee and a plate of croissants. She was already fully dressed and wearing makeup, even though the wedding was over 4 hours away. "Brought breakfast," she smiled, setting the tray on the nightstand. "Today is a special day, and I wanted us to spend the morning together." That kind of thoughtfulness wasn't very characteristic of Amelia. She usually preferred privacy in the morning and didn't like to be disturbed before 10 o'clock, but I put it down to pre-wedding excitement. "Thank you, daughter," I said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "How did you sleep?" "I slept fine. I was up all night thinking about the changes that were coming." Amelia sat down next to me and handed me a cup. The coffee was strong and flavorful, just the way I liked it. "What kind of changes?" "Well, you know." Amelia sipped her coffee and looked out the window. "Life will be very different after the wedding. A new family, new plans, children." "Children?" I smiled. "Have you and Leonardo already discussed it?" "Of course. We want children, and we don't want to put it off. Leonardo says it's better to have them while we're young and healthy." Amelia was silent for a moment, then turned to me with a serious expression on her face. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about an important matter." Something in her tone alarmed me. "I'm listening." "The thing is, Leonardo and I have been thinking a lot about where we're going to live after we get married. His parents have offered to let us stay with them, but you realize we'd be cramped in their small house. I realize that. What have you decided? Amelia put the cup on the nightstand and took my hand. Mom, I know this may seem strange, but we were thinking, what if we switched houses? What do you mean, switch? Well, think about it. You wouldn't be comfortable alone in a house that big. 8 rooms, huge grounds, constant maintenance costs. Leonardo and I need a place to start a family. I didn't say anything, trying to figure out what she was getting at. We could find you a cozy apartment in a good neighborhood, Amelia continued. 2 or 3 rooms. Modern renovations near your drugstores. It would be much more comfortable for you, and it would be more spacious for us. So you're suggesting I give you this house? Not give it to you, trade it. We'll find you a great apartment. I got up and went to the window. Downstairs, the gardener was watering the rose beds. Raphael had planned and planted this garden, and he dreamed of our grandchildren playing here. Amelia, your father built this house. This is our family history. That's why I want my children to grow up here, she said as she approached me. Mom, think about it logically. You're about to turn 53. Why do you need such a big house? You're hardly ever home. You're always at the drugstore. But this is my house, Amelia. And it will be your grandchildren's. Isn't that what Daddy dreamed of? There was some truth in what she said. Raphael did talk about grandchildren, about them running around the garden and swimming in the pool, but he never talked about me having to move out. I don't know, daughter. I'll have to think about it. Mom. Amelia sat down on the bed and patted her palm on the mattress, inviting me to sit beside her. I realize this is a difficult decision, but look at the situation from a practical standpoint. I walked back to the bed, but remained standing. What are the practicalities? First of all, it costs you a lot of money to run this house. Gardener, cleaning lady, security system, utilities. 2, you're lonely here. 3rd, when we have kids, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time with us anyway. And I'll spend that time in the apartment? Of course. We'll find an apartment nearby. You'll be able to visit your grandchildren every day and then come back to your cozy place in the evening. Amelia sounded convincing, but something about her proposal made me uneasy. Maybe it was the fact that she brought it up today, on the day of the wedding. Amelia, let's discuss this after the honeymoon. Today is not the time for such big decisions. Mom, but Leonardo and I would like to know for sure. You see, if we stay with his parents, it'll be more difficult to organize the move. Why would it be harder? Well, they'll get used to having us around, rely on us for help, and then when we want to move out, they might take offense. There's a knock at the door. May I? Cecilia's voice came. Come in, I said. My youngest daughter came into the bedroom with a bouquet of white roses in her hands. These are for the bride, she said, holding them out to Amelia. From the florist's. Thank you. Amelia took the bouquet but didn't even smell it. Cecilia, just in time. I'm discussing an important matter with my mother. What kind of question? Cecilia sat down in a chair by the window. Leonardo and I want Mom to move into an apartment and give us this house. What? Cecilia straightened up sharply. Amelia, are you crazy? Why crazy? It's a reasonable offer. Reasonable? Cecilia stood up and walked over to her sister. You want to kick Mom out of your own house? I don't want to kick her out. I'm proposing a swap. What kind of exchange? The house is worth $800,000. What kind of apartment are you going to offer her in exchange? A nice apartment downtown. How much? 100,000? 200? Where's the rest of the money going to go? Amelia blushed. Cecilia, you don't understand anything. It's not about money. It's about convenience. Whose convenience? Yours? Mom's. Amelia raised her voice. She's lonely and uncomfortable here. Did you ask her? Of course I asked her. I'm asking her now. Cecilia turned to me. Mom, do you really want to give Amelia the house? I didn't say anything. On the one hand, Amelia's arguments made sense. The house was really big, and it was expensive to maintain. On the other hand, the youngest daughter's proposal sounded harsh but fair. Why today? And why was Amelia so insistent? Mother, don't be silent, Cecilia asked. Tell me what you think. I think Amelia is right about one thing, I said at last. I do get lonely sometimes in such a big house. You see? Amelia was pleased. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to give it up. Mom! Amelia came over to me and held my hands. I understand your doubts. But think about the future. When we have children, they'll need a place to play, to develop, and Leonardo's apartment will be cramped. You could get a bigger apartment. With what? With Leonardo's salary? Mom, you know how much he makes. I know. So what? So what? If we spend all our money on rent, what are we going to save for the children's future? Amelia, Cecilia intervened. You do realize you're asking your mother to give you an $800,000 house, don't you? Not a gift, but an inheritance in advance. Inherit it? Cecilia laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. What about me? I don't get an inheritance? Your mother will buy you an apartment when you get married. Thank you for your generosity, said Cecilia sarcastically. Girls, that's enough, I said. There's no need to quarrel on a day like this. Mom, Amelia took my hand again. I know it's a lot to ask, but trust me, it really will be better for everyone. You'll be living in a comfortable apartment, not having to spend money on maintaining a big house. Leonardo and I will start a family in the house Daddy built, and our children will grow up where Cecilia and I grew up. There was an emotional truth in her words that pierced through my defenses. Indeed, Raphael dreamed of grandchildren in this house, and if Amelia was right about my loneliness... What would Leonardo say? I asked. It's a very expensive gift. He will be grateful. We'll both be grateful. Mother, don't do this, Cecilia said quietly. Please? Why not? Because it's wrong. Amelia is taking advantage of your feelings. I'm not! Amelia flared up. I'm proposing a solution that works for everyone. Everyone except Mom. It'll work for Mom, too. Right, Mom? I looked at my daughters. Amelia looked at me with hope. Cecilia with worry. They were so different, my girls. Amelia always knew what she wanted and knew how to get it. Cecilia was more cautious, more judicious. Okay, I said. Amelia, after the honeymoon, we'll do the paperwork. We will? Amelia rushed to me and hugged me. Mom, thank you. You don't know how happy I am. Cecilia silently left the room. Mom. Amelia pulled away and looked into my eyes. Did you really decide that? Yes, I answered, though my heart ached. Let your children grow up in this house. Amelia hugged me again, and I thought about the fact that I had just changed my life forever. The house that Raphael had built would no longer be mine, but it would be my grandchildren's. Maybe it was the right thing to do. Somehow, though, I feel even heavier than I did last night. The Church of St. Francis greeted us with the coolness of stone walls and the smell of incense. It was 11:15 in the morning, and the ministers had already lit the candles on the altar. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, coloring the floor in shades of blue and gold. I'd always loved this church. It was where Raphael and I had married 29 years ago, where both our daughters had been baptized. Today it looked especially solemn. White roses and lilies decorated the pews, and the center aisle was strewn with petals. The florists worked hard. The compositions turned out graceful without excessive pomp. The guests had already gathered in the main hall. Leonardo's relatives sat on the left, our friends and acquaintances on the right. His parents, Don Manuel and Dona Carmen, looked confused among the smartly dressed people. She was in a simple dark blue dress that appeared to have been bought especially for the occasion. He was nervously adjusting his tie, apparently a new one too. I made my way to the small room next to the altar where Amelia was getting ready. Her daughter stood in front of the mirror wearing a gorgeous dress from a famous Mexican designer. The dress cost me $12,000, but the result was worth it. Amelia looked like a princess from a fairy tale. The satin fabric shimmered in the morning sunlight, and the long train lay beautifully on the floor. Mom! Amelia turned to me with a radiant smile. Finally! I've been so excited! Next to her was the stylist, a young woman named Gabriella, whom we had hired especially for the wedding. She was adjusting the folds of her dress and spritzing her hair with hairspray. You look amazing, I said sincerely. Daddy would be proud. Don't make me cry. Amelia held her handkerchief to her eyes. I'm wearing makeup. The stylist finished with her hair and stepped aside. "Senora Amelia, you are ready. The veil fits perfectly, but I thought the veil was a little off to the side." I came closer. "Daughter, let me fix it." "Mom, please don't touch it." Gabriella did it right. "There's one stiletto that's a little loose." Amelia sighed and let me walk over. I carefully adjusted the veil, being careful not to damage my hair. At that moment, Leonardo entered the room. "Amelia, can I talk to you for a moment?" he said. "The priest is asking about the rings." "Your best man has the rings," Amelia replied. "You gave them to him yourself." "Yes, I did, but now he's worried about losing them. Maybe I should take them back." "Leonardo, don't make a fuss." Amelia grimaced. "Your hands are already shaking with excitement." The stylist gathered her accessories. "If you'll excuse me, I'll go," she said. "The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. Gabriella left, and it was just the three of us. Leonardo looked really worried, his face pale, his hands trembling. He was wearing a new dark gray suit that Amelia and I had picked out at an expensive store. The suit cost $3,000, but Amelia insisted that the groom must look dignified. "I'll go too," I said. "I'll see if everything is ready in the hall." "Mom, wait." Amelia took my hand. "I wanted to say thank you again. For everything. The wedding, the dress, well, you know what for." She meant the house. The morning after we talked, she was in a much better mood. She hummed as she prepared for the ceremony and didn't even argue with the stylist, though she was usually very demanding of such services. "You're welcome," I replied. "The important thing is that you're happy." I headed out and closed the door behind me, but stopped when I heard Leonardo's voice. "Amelia, I still can't believe your mother agreed to give us the house." Something in his tone made me freeze at the door. "I told you she would," Amelia said. "I just had to do the right thing." "The right way?" "Well, you know, to make her feel sorry for you. Tell her about her grandchildren, about family traditions. An old fool always falls for it." My blood froze in my veins. "Old fool? Amelia called me an old fool?" "Don't talk about your mother that way," Leonardo said, but there was no judgment in his voice, more like a formal objection. "Why, is it wrong?" Amelia laughed. "Mother was always sentimental. Remember how she cried on the Titanic? And when our hamster died, she gave him a whole funeral with a wreath." "Yeah, but still." "Still what?" "Leonardo, the house is worth $800,000. $800,000. And she's giving it to us for nothing, just to say nice things about grandchildren." "Maybe she really thinks it's for the best." "Maybe she does. But the fact is, she gave us a fortune. Now we're going to find her some apartment in a suburban neighborhood and send her off to live out her days." "Amelia." "What, Amelia? Do you feel sorry for her?" There was a metallic note in my daughter's voice that I'd never heard before. "Look, darling, if we want to live well, we have to be pragmatic. My mother worked like a horse all her life, saved up and bought real estate, and now it's time to use it. What if she changes her mind?" "She won't. She already made a promise, and Mom never breaks her promises. It's her principle that once she's said it, she'll do it." "What are we going to do with the house?" "We're going to enjoy ourselves. We'll put a nursery in the big room on the second floor, convert your father-in-law's office into a gym, maybe sell the house in a few years and buy something even better." "Sell it? Why, real estate in this neighborhood goes up every year. In 5 years it'll be worth $1 million, maybe more." I stood at the door, unable to move. Every word Amelia said hit me like a hammer. She planned not just to get my house, but to get rid of me, sending me to some apartment in a bedroom community, and then maybe sell the house her father was building. "Okay, I have to go," Amelia said. "I don't want to be late for my own wedding." I quickly moved a few feet away from the door and pretended I was just approaching. "Are you ready?" I asked, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Ready," Amelia smiled. "Mom, you look good, don't you, Leonardo?" "Of course I do." He nodded. "Very elegant." I was wearing the dark blue suit and pearl necklace that Raphael had given me for my 25th wedding anniversary, but right now I didn't care what I looked like. My daughter's words were in my head. "Old fool. Let's send her to live out her life, an apartment in a bedroom community." We went into the main hall of the church. The guests stood up when the bride appeared. Amelia walked down the aisle, glowing with happiness, and I accompanied her, trying to keep a straight face. The organist played Mendelssohn, the priest smiled. Everything looked like a beautiful fairy tale. But for me, the fairy tale turned into a nightmare. The ceremony lasted 40 minutes, but it seemed like an eternity to me. I listened to Amelia and Leonardo exchange vows of fidelity and thought about how my daughter had betrayed me before she was even a wife. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, everyone clapped, and I smiled mechanically, though inside everything burned with pain and resentment. After the ceremony, the guests congratulated the young people, the photographer took pictures, everyone laughed and rejoiced. I also went up to congratulate my daughter, kissed her on the cheek and said some appropriate words. Amelia hugged me and whispered in my ear, "Thank you, Mom. You're the best." The best fool, I thought, but kept smiling. When the hustle and bustle settled down a bit, I stepped aside and pulled out my phone. I had to talk to someone or I'd just go crazy. I dialed Paloma's number. "Estrella?" A friend answered. "How are you? Did the ceremony go well?" "Paloma, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." "What's wrong? You're talking strangely." "I can't do it in front of everyone. We're going to a restaurant and tonight I'll tell you everything." "Estrella, you're scaring me. Tell me in a nutshell what happened." I looked at Amelia, who was posing for the photographer next to Leonardo. They looked like such a happy couple. "I happened to overhear Amelia talking to her husband. Turns out I didn't give the house to my daughter this morning, but to two crooks." "What do you mean?" "They tricked me, Paloma. They used my feelings to get an $800,000 house, and now they're planning to send me to some cheap apartment far away from them." "Estrella, maybe you misunderstood something. I got it perfectly clear. Amelia called me an old fool who falls for sentimentality." Paloma was silent for a few seconds. "What are you going to do?" I looked at my daughter again. She was laughing at something the photographer was saying, and Leonardo had his arm around her waist. A perfect family picture. But now I knew what was behind those smiles. "I don't know yet, but one thing's for sure, they're not getting a house from me. Estrella, think it over. Maybe we should talk to Amelia first. Find out what's going on calmly." "Talk about what?" I heard every word. "They think I'm an old fool to be used and discarded. But she's your daughter." "Yeah, and I thought I knew her. Turns out I was wrong. Cecilia's here." "Mom, we have to go to the restaurant. The cars are waiting." "I'm coming," I said and hung up. Paloma was right about one thing. I needed to think about it. But I already knew that my decision will not change. This morning I had agreed to give up the house out of love for my daughter. Now that I knew the truth, that house would stay with me. What happens next is another matter. The restaurant Casa Real met us with a luxurious interior and the aroma of exquisite dishes. This place was considered one of the best in Guadalajara. High ceilings with moldings, crystal chandeliers, marble columns, and fresh flowers in every corner. I had booked the big room for 80 people 3 months ago with a down payment of $10,000. The full cost of the banquet was $35,000, a lot of money. But I wanted my daughter's wedding to be memorable. The restaurant manager, an elegant middle-aged man in an impeccable suit, met our procession at the entrance. His name was Don Ricardo, and over the years of working in the restaurant business, he had learned to make an unmistakable determination of a customer's ability to pay. With me, he was always emphatically polite. He must have realized that I was a serious customer. "Señora Valenzuela, welcome." He bowed respectfully. "Everything is ready for the celebration. Allow me to escort the young people into the hall." The hall looked magnificent. Round tables were covered with snow-white tablecloths. In the center of each stood compositions of white orchids and roses. Silverware glittered in the light of chandeliers. Crystal glasses sparkled like precious stones. The main table for the young people was located on a small elevation decorated with garlands of fresh flowers. Guests were seated. Waiters poured champagne for the first toast. Musicians in the corner of the room were tuning instruments. I had ordered a string quartet to create a sophisticated atmosphere. Everything was exactly as Amelia had planned in her dreams of the perfect wedding. But for me, all this beauty now felt like a set for a play where the main actors turned out to be fake. I sat at the table for the bride's relatives, smiled mechanically at the guests, and responded to congratulations, while the words I had heard in the church rolled around in my head. Old fool. Send her to live out her life. Apartment in the bedroom district. Cecilia sat next to me. My youngest daughter looked tense. She'd noticed my distress, though I tried to hide it. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked quietly, leaning toward me. "You look upset." "I'm fine," I answered just as quietly. "Just tired from a long day." But Cecilia knew me too well to believe that explanation. There was worry in her eyes, and I thought about the fact that she was the one who'd tried to warn me this morning. "Amelia is taking advantage of your feelings," she'd said. How right she was. The newlyweds were seated at the head table, surrounded by their closest friends. Amelia looked happy and relaxed, accepting congratulations, laughing at the jokes of the guests. Every now and then she would glance in my direction and smile, a grateful daughter showing her love for her generous mother. If I didn't know the truth, I would have thought she was really happy, not only about marriage, but also about our morning conversation about the house. Leonardo, too, was playing his part as a model son-in-law. He stood up and made a toast in my honor, calling me second mother and thanking me for my generosity and care. The guests clapped and raised their glasses, and I had to stand up and nod my thanks. At that moment, our eyes met, and I saw something new in them. Not just gratitude, but the satisfaction of a man who had gotten what he wanted. Leonardo's parents were sitting at a neighboring table, looking lost amidst all the luxury. Don Manuel cautiously tasted the exquisite appetizers, as if afraid that they would be too expensive for his taste. Doña Carmen did not take her admiring gaze off the floral arrangements and decorations of the hall. These simple, honest people had no idea of the game their son and daughter-in-law were playing. An hour passed. The waiters were serving the main course, veal and porcini mushroom sauce with a side of grilled vegetables. I had ordered this menu a month ago, choosing between several options. Amelia had been very picky then, demanding that everything be like in the best restaurants in Europe. Now I understood why she was so insistent on the expensive menu. She wasn't the one paying for it. The musicians played a slow tune, and the newlyweds opened the dance. Amelia, in her gorgeous gown, twirled in her husband's arms under the admiring gazes of the guests. They really did look like the perfect couple, beautiful, young, in love. But I now knew that behind this picture there was calculation and cynicism. Unable to bear it any longer, I got up from the table. I needed to talk to Amelia, to find out once and for all. Maybe I'd misunderstood something in the church. Maybe the words hadn't sounded the way I'd heard them. In the back of my mind, I was still hoping for a mistake, a misunderstanding that could be explained. After waiting for the dance to end, I approached the main table. The guests were applauding the musicians, and my approach went unnoticed. "Amelia, can I talk to you for a moment?" I said, leaning over to my daughter. "Sure, Mom." She turned to me with a wide smile. "Is there something you want to say?" "Yes, but I'd better step aside." "Why?" Amelia raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Speak here. We're family." I looked at Leonardo, who was watching our conversation, then back at my daughter. "Amelia, this morning at church I overheard you and Leonardo talking." The smile on my daughter's face trembled for a moment, but quickly recovered. "What conversation, Mom?" "We talked about a lot of things. About the house. About the fact that you got it from an old fool who's a sentimentalist." Now the smile was completely gone. Amelia glanced around quickly, checking to see if anyone could hear our conversation. Luckily, the music was playing loud enough, and the guests were busy eating and talking. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about," she said quietly. But there was a note of steel in her voice. "Yes, you do. You told Leonardo that I was an old fool, that you'd send me to an apartment in a bedroom community to live out my days, and then maybe sell the house for $1 million. Amelia's face paled, and Leonardo swallowed nervously. They looked at each other, and I realized there had been no mistake. I had heard exactly what they were saying. "Mom," Amelia tried to take my hand, but I yanked it away. "You misunderstood. We just—" "What exactly did I misunderstand?" I interrupted. "That you called me an old fool? Or that you plan to get rid of me as soon as you get the house?" "Mom, be quiet," Amelia hissed, glancing back at the guests. "Don't make a scene." "Scenes?" I felt my anger rising. What do you think you made a scene this morning? A scene about grandchildren and family traditions? I was telling the truth. The truth? Amelia, you used my love for you to get an $800,000 house, and then bragged to your husband about how cleverly you tricked your own mother. Leonardo tried to intervene. Senora Valenzuela, perhaps there really was a misunderstanding. Shut up, I cut him off. You were in on the act, agreeing to my wife's plans to send me away from you. Several guests at a neighboring table began to turn their heads in our direction, sensing the tension. Amelia noticed this and grabbed my hand. Mom, let's discuss this at home. Not here. No, I said, releasing myself from her grip. Let's talk about it right now. I want to hear the truth. What truth? Do you really think I'm an old fool? Amelia was silent, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. There was no longer the warmth in her eyes that I was used to seeing. It was replaced by something cold, calculating. Answer me, I insisted. Okay. Amelia stood up abruptly, her voice ringing so loudly that the musicians lost their rhythm. You want the truth? You'll get the truth. Now all the guests were paying attention to us. Conversations died down and people turned to the main table, waiting for explanations. Yes, Mom, I said what I said, Amelia continued, ignoring the people around her. Because you're really naive. You've been working like a horse all your life, saving money, and for what? To sit alone in a big house and feel sorry for yourself. Amelia, I exclaimed, not believing my ears. What, Amelia? I told you the truth. You're 53 years old. You've never lived for yourself. Always work, work, work. And when Daddy died, you became a recluse. I worked for you, for your education, for your future. Our future? Amelia laughed, but it was an evil laugh. Mom, you work because you don't know any other way. You don't know how to enjoy life. You don't know how to spend money on yourself. You're always saving, planning. You only know how to spend other people's money. Yes, I do. And you know what? I'm not going to apologize for wanting to live a better life than you. The guests started whispering. Some pulled out their phones to videotape what was going on. Don Manuel and Doña Carmen sat with their mouths open, not understanding what was going on. The musicians finally stopped playing. Amelia, calm down. Cecilia tried to intervene, coming to our table. You stay out of this. Amelia snapped at her sister. You've always been on her side. You've always supported her against me. I supported justice, Cecilia replied calmly. Justice? Amelia turned to me. Is it fair that you've been greedy and selfish all your life? That you never thought of our needs? How can you say that? I felt tears coming to my eyes. I gave you the best years of my life. No one asked you to, Amelia shouted. No one asked you to sacrifice yourself. You did it because you didn't know how to live any other way. Amelia, stop it! Leonardo tried to stop his wife, but she wouldn't listen to him. No, it's not enough. The daughter turned to the guests. Do you want to know the truth about the perfect mother? She's always been greedy and controlling. She can't even give a gift without recriminations and complaints. What? I couldn't believe it. Amelia, you're the one who talked about how you deceived me, how you used my feelings. Yes, I did. And you know what? It was easy, because you want to be loved and appreciated, but you're not willing to give anything in return. Nothing in return? I gave you an $800,000 house. After I talked you into it for an hour. An hour. A normal mother would have offered to help her children. I stood in the middle of the grand hall, surrounded by 80 guests, and felt my whole world crumble. My daughter, whom I loved more than life, to whom I gave my best, called me greedy and selfish, in front of everyone, on her wedding day. You know what, Amelia, I said, wiping away my tears. You're right about one thing. I really was naive. I thought I'd raised a daughter, and I raised— What? She asked defiantly. Speak up. I raised an ungrateful egomaniac who thinks the world owes her something. That's it! Amelia clapped her hands. You finally said what you think. And now I'm going to say what I think. She came close to me, a cold fire in her eyes. You are no longer my mother, she said clearly and distinctly. From this moment on, we are strangers, and get out of my wedding. Now. The room fell dead silent. Even the waiters stopped moving, frozen with trays in their hands. "Amelia!" Cecilia exclaimed. "What are you saying?" "What I think," replied without taking her eyes off me. "Mother, get out of here. You have spoiled my wedding with your suspicions and complaints." "I ruined it?" My voice shook with resentment and anger. "Amelia, you ruined it with your greed and your lies." "Mother, go away," she repeated coldly, "or I'll have the guards escort you out." I looked at the guests. Some looked sympathetic, others curious, others clearly filming on their phones. Leonardo's parents sat pale as a sheet. Cecilia stood next to them, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'm leaving. But remember, Amelia, you will not get the house from me, ever." And I headed out of the hall, feeling the stares of 80 people on me. Behind me, I heard my daughter's voice. We'll see who's who." But I didn't turn around. Cecilia caught up with me at the exit. "Mom, wait! I'm coming with you." "No," I said, taking her hands. "Stay here. It's your sister's wedding." "What kind of wedding is it after what happened?" "Cecilia, thank you for your support, but stay. Maybe you can talk some sense into her." I kissed my youngest daughter on the forehead and left the restaurant. It was a beautiful sunny day outside, but for me, the whole world went dark. As I walked out of the banquet hall, I stopped in the restaurant's spacious lobby to catch my breath. My heart was beating so hard that I was afraid I couldn't take it. My hands were shaking, my mouth was dry, and the blood was pounding in my temples. The last 10 minutes seemed like a nightmare from which I was about to wake up. But no, this was reality. My oldest daughter had just publicly humiliated me and kicked me out of her own wedding. I pulled a mirror out of my purse and looked at myself. My face was pale, my mascara smeared under my eyes, my lipstick wiped off. I looked like a woman who had just been through a disaster, which was true, actually. There was silence in the hall, broken only by the muffled sounds of music and conversations from the banquet hall. Life went on there. The guests did not know what to do after the scandal, but gradually returned to eating and socializing. The waiters were probably trying to smooth over the awkwardness of the situation, the musicians were playing again, and Amelia and Leonardo were trying to salvage the remnants of the celebration. But I knew what to do next. The decision had ripened in me instantly as soon as my daughter had called me greedy and selfish. If she thought she could use me and then throw me away like a worthless item, she was about to find out she was wrong. I made my way to the receptionist's desk. Don Ricardo stood there with his usual professional smile, looking over some paperwork. When he saw me, he immediately straightened up. "Señora Valenzuela," he exclaimed with a caring tone, "how are things in the hall? I hope everything is going well?" "Don Ricardo," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I need to talk to you about the bill." Of course. He pulled out a folder of documents. "We have a few extra items. The guests ordered more wine than originally planned. But that's minor. Don Ricardo, I'm not paying for the banquet." The administrator raised his eyes from the papers and looked at me in surprise. "I'm sorry, Señora. I don't understand." "What part of the bill do you mean?" "The whole bill. I refuse to pay for the gala." Don Ricardo put the folder aside and looked at my face carefully, apparently trying to see if I was joking. "Señora Valenzuela, perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. We have a contract, you made a deposit." "There is no misunderstanding," I interrupted. "I am no longer the mother of the bride. Accordingly, I'm not responsible for her wedding expenses." "What do you mean? You're not the mother?" Don Ricardo was completely confused. "Señora, I'm afraid I don't understand the situation. It's very simple. My daughter has just told me that I am no longer her mother, in front of all the guests. Therefore, her wedding bill does not concern me." The receptionist was silent for a few seconds, pondering what he had just heard. In his eyes, I could see the struggle between professional courtesy and growing panic. He was clearly faced with a situation that was not in his job description. "Señora Valenzuela," he finally said in a cautious tone, "you see, we have a contract, a legally binding document. Your signature is under it." "I see. And what of it?" "Well, we can't just cancel an account because of a family dispute." "Don Ricardo," I approached the counter and placed my hands on the marble surface. "Let's be blunt. How much do I owe you?" including additional orders, $25,000. The advance of $10,000 has already been made. 25,000, I repeated. That's a lot of money. Tell me, do newlyweds have that kind of money? Yeah, I can't know the financial situation of your guests. Yes, you can. The groom works for an insurance company, makes no more than $1,000 a month. The bride is a bank manager, same salary. Where did they get $25,000? Don Ricardo was beginning to see where I was going with this. Senora, but the contract was signed with you? And I'm canceling it, right now. You can't do that. We have obligations to our suppliers, to our staff. The food is already prepared, the waiters are working, the musicians are playing. That's your problem, Don Ricardo. Go to the people who are using your services now, the newlyweds. The receptionist turned pale. He knew for sure that the newlyweds didn't have the money to pay for such a banquet. Senora Valenzuela, let's settle this in a civilized manner. Perhaps you are emotionally disturbed right now. I am perfectly calm, I said in a steady voice. I'm making an informed decision. My daughter wanted a lavish wedding. Let her pay for it. But people are sitting in the hall, eating, drinking. Let them eat and drink, at the expense of those who invited them. Don Ricardo grabbed the phone. I need to consult with the management, he mumbled. Consult, I'm off. Wait! He held out his hand as if he wanted to stop me. Where are you going? Home. You take care of your problems with the people who are organizing the party. I headed for the exit, but Don Ricardo caught up with me. Senora, that's impossible. We can't just kick people out in the middle of a banquet. Why not? If they don't pay for the services, what right do they have to use them? But there are 80 people there. It's a scandal. The scandal has already happened, Don Ricardo. Now it's just a matter of who pays for it. The administrator realized that persuasion wouldn't work. In his eyes appeared the expression of a man who realizes the scale of the disaster. All right, he said in a low voice, if you insist, but I must warn the newlyweds. Warn them. It is your right. Don Ricardo went back to the counter and picked up the internal telephone. I heard him talking to one of the staff. Alejandro, come to me immediately and bring security. We have a problem. A minute later, a man in an austere suit, apparently the maitre d', appeared, accompanied by 2 guards. Don Ricardo quickly explained the situation. The maitre d' looked at me incredulously. Is the senora really refusing to pay? Indeed, I confirmed. And we have to close the banquet? If the newlyweds can't pay the bill, yes, Don Ricardo replied. The guards looked at each other. One of them, an older man with a gray mustache, scratched the back of his head. It won't be pretty, he said. People are eating, drinking, having fun. Who says it has to be beautiful? I asked. My daughter thinks she can behave however she wants without repercussions. Let her find out she's wrong. Don Ricardo sighed heavily. Okay. Alejandro, go to the hall. Find the newlyweds. Explain the situation. If they can't pay the full cost of the banquet now, we close the event. What if they start a fight? Then we call the police. We have a contract. We have unpaid bills. Legally, we're right. The maitre d' nodded and headed for the ballroom. The guards remained waiting in the lobby. I decided to wait too. I wanted to see what would happen next. About 5 minutes passed. The usual sounds of fun were coming from the hall. Laughter, talking, music. Then the music stopped abruptly, and there were surprised exclamations. After another minute, the door of the hall opened, and Amelia sprang out. Her face was red with anger, and her white dress fluttered behind her like a banner. A pale Leonardo came running out. "Where is that mad woman?" Amelia shouted, looking around the hall. When she saw me, she rushed toward me, but the guards blocked her way. "You!" She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You're crazy! You're sick!" "Amelia," I said calmly, "is there a problem?" "Problems? What are you doing? They say they're closing the banquet. Not them. You're shutting it down by your behavior. Me? You're the one who refused to pay. Because you said I wasn't your mother anymore. Remember?" Leonardo tried to intervene. "Mrs. Valenzuela, maybe we can make a deal." "Negotiate what?" Amelia interrupted him. "That psychopath has lost her mind." Don Ricardo approached us. "Mrs. Amelia, I've explained the situation. If you can pay the remaining amount, $25,000, we will continue the service. If not, "Where did we get $25,000? Amelia screamed. "We had an agreement with my mother." "But your mother is reneging on her commitment. She can't. We have a contract." "The contract is with her, not with you," the administrator explained patiently. "And she's canceling it." Amelia turned to me. "Mom, stop it. Do you realize what you're doing? There are 80 people there." "I do. So what?" "So what? It's a disgrace, a scandal for the whole of Guadalajara." "Amelia," I said quietly, "an hour ago you called me greedy and selfish. You said I was no longer your mother, kicked me out of your wedding, and now you want me to pay for it?" "I was upset. You know that's not what I meant." "What exactly did you mean? When you called me an old fool in church, or when you humiliated me in front of the guests?" Leonardo tugged his wife's arm. "Amelia, apologize. Maybe Mom will change her mind." "I will not apologize." Amelia snatched her hand away. "She's the one who should apologize. She ruined my wedding." "I ruined it?" I wondered. Interesting logic. Don Ricardo looked at his watch. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need a decision. The guests are getting restless." "How much time do we have?" Leonardo asked. "Half an hour. If the payment issue isn't resolved in that time, we'll be forced to close the event." Amelia clutched her head. "Half an hour? Where are we going to find $25,000 in half an hour?" "That's your problem," Don Ricardo said and walked back to the counter. Amelia came right up to me. Tears of rage burned in her eyes. "Mom, I'm begging you, don't do this. Please don't do this." "Am I a mom again?" "You always were." "I said something stupid. I was upset. You told the truth. What you thought." "No, I wasn't thinking. What? I just wanted you to understand. That we're adults. That we can make decisions." Amelia was rambling, stammering, trying to find the words to change my mind. But it was too late. The words had already been said. The masks had been dropped. "Amelia," I said tiredly, "you're an adult. You have to take responsibility for your actions, for what you say." "But the wedding." "The wedding is your choice, like everything else." Leonardo tried one last time. "Señora Valenzuela, perhaps we could arrange an installment plan or a partial payment." "Go to the receptionist," I replied. It was no longer my problem. I headed for the exit. Behind me, I heard Amelia shouting, "Mom, don't go! Mom!" But I didn't turn around. I reached the glass doors of the restaurant and went outside. Waiting for me in the parking lot was the driver, an elderly man named Carlos, whom I had hired for the gala. When he saw me, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Señora, is the gala already over?" "For me, yes," I replied. "Let's go home." "And the newlyweds? The guests?" "Let them work out their own problems." Carlos opened the door and I got in the car. As we drove away, I saw in the rearview mirror the security company's car pull up in front of the restaurant. Apparently, Don Ricardo had decided to increase security measures in case of a riot. I sat in the car and watched the scene outside the restaurant. Carlos started the engine, but I asked him to wait a few more minutes. I wanted to see how this story would end. Through the glass doors, I could see a whole group of people gathered in the lobby. Don Ricardo was talking animatedly with the guards, waving his arms. The maitre d' Alejandro stood nearby with a serious face. They were joined by two other men in dark suits, apparently additional guards who had been called in to deal with the situation. "Señora, shouldn't we go after all?" Carlos suggested hesitantly. "It's uncomfortable to watch." 5 more minutes, I replied. "I want to know how it ends." At that moment, a group of guards headed toward the banquet hall. Don Ricardo walked ahead with a determined expression on his face. 30 years in the restaurant business had taught him how to deal with all kinds of situations, but this was probably the first time this had happened. The doors to the ballroom opened, and the whole group came in. I strained my hearing, but I couldn't hear anything from the car. There were a few minutes of silence, and then outraged voices came from the hall. The first people to leave the hall were the guests. First, a few elderly couples. They looked confused and bewildered, not realizing what was going on. They were followed by others, some with indignant faces, others looking back curiously, obviously wanting to see the continuation of the scandal. Leonardo's parents, Don Manuel and Doña Carmen, were among the first to leave. She was clutching a small purse to her chest and looked completely lost. He was supporting his wife under her arm and saying something quietly to her. They passed my car without noticing me and headed for their old sedan. Poor people, Carlos muttered. Why the shame? I didn't say anything. I felt sorry for Leonardo's parents, too. Simple, honest people who'd been victimized by someone else's conflict. But nothing could be changed. The guests continued to leave the hall. Some stopped near the entrance, discussing what was happening. Others silently went to their cars. Someone took out their cell phones and dialed something, apparently telling their acquaintances about the unprecedented scandal. The musicians came out with their instruments in their hands. The violinist, an elderly man with a gray beard, looked particularly upset. Apparently, over many years of work, he was used to the fact that his performances end with applause, not scandals. Then the waiters appeared, carrying trays of half-eaten dishes. They whispered among themselves, casting glances at Don Ricardo, who stood stone-faced at the entrance. "Where are the newlyweds?" Carlos asked. As if in answer to his question, loud shouts came from the hall. A woman's voice, with a combination of rage and despair, overrode all other sounds. "I'm not leaving," Amelia shouted. "This is my wedding. It's mine." Through the glass doors, they could see some kind of struggle going on in the back of the hall. A white dress flashed between the dark figures of the guards. "Get your hands off me," Amelia continued to shout. "I'll pay. I will find the money and I will pay." "Senora," came the voice of one of the guards, "please don't complicate the situation. We need to vacate the premises." "What room? This is my banquet, my wedding." "The wedding is over," Don Ricardo replied coldly, appearing in the doorway of the hall. "We have other events, other clients." "You're lying!" Amelia shouted even louder. "You have no one else here tonight. I checked when I made the reservation." "It doesn't matter. The room must be vacated." At that moment, Leonardo came into view. He tried to calm his wife down, saying something in her ear, but she wouldn't listen. "Get off!" She pushed her husband away. "It's all because of your cowardice. You should have told that old hag that we would pay for everything ourselves." "Amelia, calm down," begged Leonardo. "Let's just leave with dignity. We don't have that kind of money anyway." "What dignity?" Amelia's voice broke into a shriek. "I'm being thrown out of my own wedding like a beggar." Don Ricardo made a sign to the guards. Two of them approached Amelia. "Senora, let's go to the exit," one of them said politely but firmly. "Don't touch me." Amelia backed away. "I'll walk on my own." But instead of going to the exit, she suddenly rushed to the table where the wedding cake stood. She grabbed a cake cutter and swung it around. "If you kick me out, I'll tear the place apart," she shouted. "Everything!" The guards immediately rushed toward her. One of them deftly snatched the knife from her hands, and the other grabbed her wrists. "Let me go!" Amelia struggled as hard as she could. "Let me go! This is iniquity!" "Senora, don't resist," said the guard. "We don't want to use force." "Use force!" Amelia laughed hysterically. "It's already ruined anyway. Everything." She tried to kick one of the guards, but the long dress prevented her. Tripping on the plume, she fell, dragging the guard with her. "Careful with the dress!" Leonardo shouted. "It was worth $12,000. But it was too late. When the guards lifted Amelia, the long train caught on a chair leg and with a distinctive sound tore. A piece of expensive fabric was left on the floor. "My dress!" Amelia wailed. "They tore my dress." "You fell yourself," Don Ricardo said calmly. "We warned you." "You'll pay for everything!" Amelia pointed her finger at the receptionist. "Everything! For the dress, for the humiliation, for ruining the wedding." "Senora," Don Ricardo replied icily, "the only thing we'll have to pay for is the cleanup after your debauch, but you will pay for the spoiled tablecloths and broken glasses." I noticed that Amelia had actually knocked several glasses off the table during the struggle. The shards of crystal glittered on the white tablecloth. "I curse you!" Amelia shouted as the guards dragged her towards the exit. "I curse this restaurant. May all your customers leave. May you go bankrupt." "Amelia, stop it!" pleaded Leonardo, trying to walk beside his wife. "You're only making things worse." "It's already worse," she replied through her tears. "It can't get any worse." The procession was approaching the exit. Amelia did not resist any longer, but continued to shout curses against the restaurant, its staff, and all the bastards who ruin other people's happiness. "You will be sorry," she shouted at Don Ricardo. "I'll tell everyone what you're like. I'll write on the internet, in the newspapers. Everyone will know how you treat your customers." "Right," the receptionist replied nonchalantly. "Just don't forget to mention that you refused to pay for the services." Finally, Amelia was taken out of the restaurant. The guards escorted her to the parking lot, apparently fearing that she would try to return. Leonardo followed, occasionally trying to say something to his wife, but she didn't listen. Their car, the white convertible Amelia had rented for the wedding, was parked not far from mine. The security guards waited until the newlyweds got into the car before moving away. Even through the closed windows, Amelia could be heard yelling at her husband. She accused him of cowardice, of not protecting her, of not finding the money, of not preventing the disaster. Leonardo sat behind the wheel with a drooping head and remained silent. "Señora," Carlos said quietly, "can we go now? It's awkward to watch someone else's grief." I nodded. Really, that was enough. I had seen what I wanted to see. Amelia had learned a lesson that would probably teach her something, though knowing my daughter, I doubted it. "Let's go home," I said. Carlos started the engine, and we drove slowly out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, I could see Don Ricardo talking to the remaining guards. They were nodding, receiving final instructions. The restaurant was going back to normal business as if nothing had happened. The drive home took 20 minutes. I sat in silence, staring out the window at the familiar streets of Guadalajara. The city lived its usual life, people rushing about, children playing in the parks, vendors offering goods. No one knew that my whole life had just fallen apart. The phone rang when we were almost home. It was Amelia calling. I stared at the screen where her name was flashing and didn't answer. The call cut off, but a minute later it started again. Then it started again. And again. On the fifth ring, I answered. "Yes? Mom!" Amelia's voice was shaking with tears and rage. "Do you know what happened? They kicked everyone out, all the guests. In the middle of the banquet, they tore my dress." "Sad," I said indifferently. "Sad? Mom, it's a disaster, an embarrassment for the rest of my life. How will I face people now?" "I don't know. It's your problem." "My problems? You created them." "Me? Amelia, you chose this path, when you thought you could use my love and then throw me away like a piece of junk. I didn't mean to. I did. And I got what I wanted. Now you're free of your old, greedy, selfish mother. Be happy." "Mom, come on, let's meet up. Talk quietly." "What's there to talk about? You said everything today at the restaurant." "I was wrong. I'm sorry." "It's too late to apologize, Amelia. It can't be too late. I'm your daughter." "No," I said quietly. "You said yourself that I'm not your mother anymore. Then you are no longer my daughter." "Mom." I disconnected the phone and turned it off. I never wanted to hear Amelia's voice again. Not today, anyway. When we got to the house, there were 2 cars waiting for me at the gate. Cecilia got out of one and Paloma got out of the other. Apparently, the youngest daughter had called my friend and told her what had happened. "Mom!" Cecilia ran up to me and hugged me. "How are you? I was so worried." "I'm fine, daughter," I answered, although nothing was good. Paloma came over and took my hand. "Estrella, what happened?" "Cecilia told me, but I can't believe it." "Believe it," I said tiredly. It's exactly as she said. We went into the house. In the living room, the floral arrangements that had been prepared for the pre-wedding dinner were still there. Now they seemed like a mockery of my dashed hopes. "Mom, tell me the story from the beginning," Cecilia asked. I did. About the overheard conversation in the church, about the confrontation in the restaurant, about the refusal to pay for the banquet. Paloma listened in silence, only occasionally shaking her head. Cecilia was crying. "I told you this morning," she said through her tears. "I told you that Amelia was using you. I did, and I was right." "Estrella," Paloma intervened. "What now? What are you going to do?" I wondered. "What to do?" "Go on living, I guess. Work, take care of Cecilia, be happy with what I have, and never give up the house. Never." "I'll live," I said. "In a different way, but I'll live." "And Amelia? What about Amelia? She's a grown woman, married. Let her make her own life. But she's your daughter. She was, until today. Paloma and Cecilia looked at each other. I guess they hadn't expected me to be so adamant. Mom, Cecilia said quietly, maybe things will get better with time. Maybe, I agreed. But for that to happen, Amelia would have to change, and I don't believe in that. We sat in the living room, drinking tea and talking about what had happened. The sun was setting outside the window, coloring the sky pink and gold. The day that should have been the happiest day of my daughter's life was coming to an end, and became the scariest of mine. But the strange thing was, it wasn't as hard on my soul as I had expected. On the contrary, there was a kind of relief, like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No more pretending to ignore Amelia's selfishness. I no longer had to justify her actions with a mother's love. I was free for the first time in years,